Hi everyone. Okay, I'm going to give you some general feedback about this family forms assignment, just some things I noticed. Um, we're going to go through the Canadian stuff, the US stuff, and then the international stuff. So in Canada, one thing that a lot of you were confused about or misunderstood, which it would be easy to do, but I'm going to show you how you can sort of double check these kinds of things, was right here. So if you look at these percentages, you may notice that if you add the female parents and the male parents together, you get this number here, the lone parent families, which should tell you that these two groups of people, female parents and male parents, are lone parent families. And see how it's indented here? And see, here's the indent here, right? So of all the couples, how many are married, how many are common law? Of all the single parent or lone parent families, how many are female and how many are male? Some of you commented that this was a really, how could this possibly be that there's so few male parents out there? It's not that there's so few male parents, it's that there's so few male parents parenting on their own without a potentially female partner. Some of you also got confused about this as it might relate to same-sex marriage and thinking that that it meant that it was male partners and female partners. No, these are, again, a subset of the lone parent families. Okay, so when you're shocked about a stat that makes no sense whatsoever, it may make sense just to sort of look at it again and just sort of try and figure out maybe I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing. Okay, what else? Common law. It's important to understand that yes, these numbers are increasing. However, it is not necessarily true that when a couple lives common law, that they're never going to marry each other. Lots of people do this as sort of a test run. Some people don't think they believe in marriage and they get a little bit older, or they have children, or they decide they want to have children and they decide, yes, maybe I do want to be married. So while the married numbers are decreasing, the common law numbers are increasing, there is something going on there. Not necessarily all of these people are never going to end up in this category here. Okay, some of them will. Also, the no parent statistic, which was somewhere in the StatsCan stuff, is not on this page. Not living with one's parents does not necessarily mean that a child is alone without an adult in their household and left to their own devices living on the streets. It can mean that, and in some places in the world, I suppose it's more likely to mean that than it would here. But we have a whole foster parent system, we have an adoption system, we have a group home system for kids who end up in the foster system and don't get adopted. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no adult living with them. Okay, over to the US stuff. So this was obviously very different and a whole lot more simplistic than the Canadian information. I'm sure you can find lots of the Canadian stats for the Americans, but I kind of did this exercise on purpose to sort of show you something. Some of you found, I don't know if you Googled stuff or made up stuff, I'm not sure what happened, but there were a couple of people who had some really weird numbers here. And some of you tried to recreate this exact table for your American numbers, and that didn't necessarily work out very well because we don't have the stuff by year. I like this. Okay, actually, I saved that for later. Okay. The international. Okay. I understand that this is a really bad graph. This may be the worst graph I've ever seen. And what I really enjoyed was that some of you used the term roughly. There was roughly whatever percentage, okay? Because this is really difficult to look at, especially the orange. It's almost impossible to figure out. You have to look at the bottom and the top and kind of figure out what percentage you think this is, and it's really small. So hopefully you were zooming in to try and figure this out. Very challenging graph to look at, there's no doubt. But it does show you that not everyone that's presenting us with great data is doing it in a way that we can easily comprehend. Only one or two of you chose countries that were not different from us. Someone chose, oh, what was it? Might have been Germany or something. It's a country that's different to us. They are not very different to us. Anywhere in Europe should be considered similar to us for the most part. You may also have noticed that in some of these graphs, you can see the problem already. We've got very old data from China from way back from 1990, and then in some countries, we've got really recent data from 2011. And I know I challenged some of you in my comments that you're making comparisons. Well, this number was different for this country than this country, but some of the data is as much as 20 years apart. So it's actually not helpful to try and make those comparisons because a lot could have happened in that time frame. All right, in general, a couple of things to note. One is that when you're doing these comparisons, when you've got rough numbers, like a number of families, and then you've got a percentage for something else, those are two very different calculations. Some of you use the logic that, well, but this country's got a lot larger population than we do. It's great that you understand that that could be a factor in these statistics in general. However, if you were talking about percentages, when you calculate a percentage, right, the bottom number in that division will be the total population of the country. So if you're going to compare percentages between two countries, then the population is no longer a factor. That's the whole point, actually, of calculating these kinds of stats in percentage, is so that you eliminate the size of the population from becoming an important factor that makes it harder to compare. So if you're using percentages, don't worry about the total population. It no longer matters. Okay. What most of you picked up on was the fact that we don't have the same data in these tables from country to country. So it makes it really, really difficult to compare anything internationally. Okay. Now, children with no parents, I found some of these numbers very sad, right? To imagine, no matter what your circumstances are, the fact that you didn't end up in a family unit with a parent or two parents to parent you is kind of distressing. Okay, so generally speaking, good job. We got it done. A lot of your analysis was pretty good, and I made some individual comments in your docs, but I just want to go over a few general things so that we all understand some stuff moving forward.